I'm Dolapa Oni. I'm the host of the Property Mom podcast. And I'm finally having my first ever guest. And she's someone I've known for a while, who's also been a property mompreneur, left her job in the city as well, and has forged a career for herself in property. But here's the thing, she never had to put in a penny of her own funds. So this is what I'm talking about, getting started with almost zero money down. She pretty much built up her entire portfolio of managed properties, which she controls and which she's managed to amass over the last few years. So it's going to be a really interesting episode. So do tune in. You can check out the link on my bio. It's propertymom.co.uk. And it's going to be launched tomorrow. So definitely check it out. So on today's podcast, I'm so excited to be in the presence of like my hero. So her name is Temi.
Not your hero.
Temi Fashola. And one of the reasons why I really, really, really appreciate her journey is that she literally started from a standing start of zero. And that's the whole point of these 14-week strategies that I've always been talking about. That in order to be able to create a cash flow, you don't always have to have that initial deposit. But the one thing you have to be able to do is network. You need to be able to leverage on those networks. And Temi has been amazing at that. So just to give a bit of background, remember the first episode ever of this podcast, I said, when you want to get into property, one of the key things you should do is to find a property buddy. And Temi is my property buddy. Like from the minute we met, we were so like-minded when it came to like just talking about how to sort of get on in life. We were both working in the city, but we both knew we wanted to achieve more, right? Mm. So Temi, she's going to talk about her background, but she was like a stockbroker. She was like a city chick, but she just knew that she wanted more, So it's all about how she sort of transitioned from her city life into being like this amazing mompreneur. And now we have these amazing discussions on the transition and how far we've gone. And how long has it been, Temi, actually, since you?
I think we started, I'll say probably kind of unofficially, maybe since 2007, 2008.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's been, kind of 12 to 13 years.
Yeah. Because we both bought our first property together.
Our first property
right?
together,
So
yes.
That's what I said, that because I didn't have enough of a deposit to buy a house and she didn't have enough. So we combined forces and we were able to buy our first ever property.
Exactly.
So just give us a bit of background on your journey and how you basically got into property.
Okay, thanks for the glowing introduction, Dolapa. Yes. Okay, so my background, I'm a former banker. I started my career in banking, actually in Nigeria. I moved over to the UK, did an MBA, and started working, as Dolapa said, in the city. But I'd always been interested in property. I'd always had an eye on, anything property related. And people that knew me knew that about me. So the way my property journey started it actually happened quite organically, because the people that I knew that no matter what I was doing, I was always kind of the go-to person when they wanted to talk about property, find out about what was going on. And they also knew that, I'm somebody that wherever I am, I try to sort of establish a footprint and I kind of know how to get things done. Mm-hmm. So it was kind of more, request or demand driven. I had because I'd worked in the corporate sector in Nigeria, I had a good, a good network of, former colleagues, former clients, friends, and all that. These are professionals with a bit of disposable income, just the type of people that would be our target markets in whatever our property
endeavors are. And this is the network that we're talking about. Exactly those
type of network. Exactly. Yeah. So they're the type of people that would come into London, probably be looking for a place to stay and to rent for a considerable length of time, or people that have a bit of disposable income and looking for a place to park their funds, maybe to invest either as a London base or something to buy as an investment. So I started getting queries from friends and, ex-colleagues like that asking me, oh, you're in London now, I'm coming into London. I'm looking for a place to rent. I'm looking for a place to buy. And initially I started doing it. Like Dolly and I already said, I was working in the city and I started doing it alongside my job just as a favor for friends. People knew that I was reliable. They trusted my eye and my taste, and would say, oh, I trust your judgment. I'm looking for this. Can you help me find? And I would do it completely free of charge.
Yeah.
And
So
it also goes to
just
the concept of, if you can find something that you enjoy, you never have to work a day in your life, because it was something I was doing for free. I was just doing it because people wanted me to help them out. For me, it didn't seem like work, because it was like, you almost got to check out a place for you. I love looking at houses. Let's go. So I started doing that.
Something I heard is that if you get a request 3 times on a particular issue or something, go and create a product.
Then there's an opportunity there.
So that's an opportunity.
Exactly. And that's how it started for me. So I did it, a number of times for people. Somebody would say, oh, who helped you do this? Oh, Timmy was the one that did this for me. Or Stokwe, as I'm known by my friends in Nigeria. Stokwe was the one that did this for me. So more people will come and start asking me for this. And at a point, I started getting a bit irritated, like, I don't have the time for this. I have a job. I'm not interested. And I remember a friend of mine at the time, she was one that came to me with a request. And she was always one bringing these types of requests to me. She snapped at me like, don't you want to make money? You know that you can actually make money from this. So I'm prepared to pay you. And something just kind of went off in my head, like, okay, actually, makes a good point. Actually, I could make money from this. And I'll tell you, my very first transaction, my very first sort of commercial transaction in shortlets was this lady had come to me wanting a place to rent for a family member that was coming for 3 weeks to London, and they wanted to stay in Paddington. And this was back in 2008, late 2008 or maybe early 2009. I can't remember exactly now. And I remember at the time they'd come saying they wanted a place in Paddington. Their budget was £700 a week. Even then, their budget was £700 a week. And it might sound like a lot of money if you live in the UK and you're thinking, oh, that's a decent rent. But for a short let, if you compare it against the price of hotels, it was what properties in Paddington were renting for. And social media also had a role to play in that, because at the time I didn't have, like I said, I was a banker working in the city. All I had was my contacts and my imagination. I didn't have any properties to let. I wasn't actually actively playing in the property market at all. But I remember she was kind of pushing me. She wanted me to help her find a place. Then I remember a friend of mine had put something up on Facebook advertising that they had short lets.
And what year was this?
This was back in 2008 or 2009.
This is 2008, 2009, and you're still able to leverage the power of social media.
Absolutely. It was social media that started it for me. I had just noticed at the time, you have people see people's status updates. And I remember seeing this guy putting in there that he was, he had shortlets, that he was marketing his shortlets. I remember seeing it at the time. I made a mental note, just filed it away somewhere. And then when this lady came to me looking, I didn't know anybody else that I could go to. They were looking for something in Paddington. He didn't have anything in Paddington, but he did have in Hatfield. I don't think anything could be further away from Paddington.
Maybe on the train. But.
Exactly. So their budget was obviously not going to work for Paddington. But he had a 4-bed house. He had 4-bed houses in Hatfield that he was looking to rent out. And I went to him and said, oh, look, you know what? I have these people. And he said, actually, why don't you try and sell it to them? So you can imagine somebody whose brief is to, and this is where your skills as a salesperson, your skills as a salesperson comes into play. It's not about trying to push people into something. It's about recognizing, knowing how to match what they say they want with what they can achieve with what they have.
Yes.
So their budget wasn't going to cover a Paddington property, but I knew that how to sell the Hatfield property to them. They were looking for a 2-bedroom in Paddington. There were quite a number of them. I think they were going to be by a family of 5 or 6. We had these 4-bedroom houses in Hatfield that were, townhouses. And I remember at the time, the asking price, the asking price that the person who owned the property had offered me the property for was £500 a week. Their budget was £700 a week.
Yeah.
You can imagine. I by the time I finished selling it to them and saying, "Look, it's not in Paddington. It's not even in London at all. But it's close to a train station. It has fast links into London.
And you're selling all the other amenities that it has.
Exactly. There's a big shopping center close by, so you won't. You're not going to be cut off from you know, from all the sort of, you know, amenities that you would need. You'd be able to shop easily. There's supermarkets nearby. And, you
So
know,
at this point, you were playing a search agent role in a
I
sense,
was
where you were
primarily a secretary. I
matching,
was a complete middleman.
yeah,
I
complete
had no,
middleman,
I almost
no
entered,
stake in
I
the
entered
game,
into it kind of
no
casually,
rent
you
to
know.
rent,
For me,
just,
it was the opportunity to make a margin.
yeah.
So I went in there, sold them the idea. They said, okay, they sent somebody to come and view the property. She came to see it. She thought it was amazing. She liked the location. She liked the whatever. And by the time we knew, we had sealed a deal. I got
How
the
much
property at 500. I offered it to them at 700. They paid 700 a week. For 3 weeks, I made £600. And
Not
all
by
I
not,
had
and
to
you
do,
didn't leave your desk.
I didn't need a dime.
Yeah.
But basically, and all my entire cost on that transaction was the cost of the fuel to drive from my flat in Hendon.
And so this is the whole point of saying that within property, there are ways to get into it without necessarily having that huge deposit. So there you are, you've made £600 from your first deal.
Very first
by
deal,
not doing much, you know, and this is
not
just
doing
one
much at
property
all.
that one person has. Now imagine if you scale that, you had 50 properties, which is eventually where you went, isn't that? Where you ended up moving that. So let's say, so this is starting from strategy. So within the 14 strategies that I listed, it's starting with strategy number 2. But very quickly, she evolved into strategy number, I think it's strategy number 4, where you became a service accommodation property manager, where you started to build up the network and build up all the contacts of the people that you'd said that you even the people that had come in as your original clients. Started to manage when they eventually purchased properties and bought properties, which you were able to help them through another strategy, the buyer's agent, which your business is now even just taking off in that respect. You know, we've mentioned
what I always say
strategies that you've been able to use in your business. Go on.
So what I always say about my business model is that everything is interlinked.
It is.
We're a full service property management company. So the entire transaction life cycle of property, you know, for a lot of my clients come to me, the first point of contact I have with them is they came to me because they came on holiday or they came on business and they were looking for a place to rent, to stay
that's
for.
Your gateway. That's your gateway into.
They liked the experience. They liked the service they got from us. When they're coming to London again for anything else, I will be their first point of contact. Of course, naturally, when they then decide they want to invest, rather than go to some nameless, faceless agent on a high street, they will come to me because they've already experienced the service I'm able to offer. You know, even on just on the short let side. So they come to me. Sometimes they don't even know whether I offer acquisition services at all, but they come and ask a question, and that's how I kind of, you know, started the acquisitions business. Again, it wasn't something I proactively thought, okay, I'm just going to build up. I didn't even know search agents existed. I didn't know that people could pay you to look for property for them. Because, you know, we lived in the UK. If you wanted to buy a property in the UK, you called up Foxtons, you called up Benham Reeves, you know, you went on, you know,
whatever, the landlord's agent,
and you called up, and you looked for your property yourself. I didn't know that this was a market sector at all.
Exactly. On behalf of the buyer and get a commission on both sides.
Exactly. You know, even if you can't get on both sides, even one side, you know, it's sufficient. If you can get on both sides, happy days, great for you. But if you can't get on both sides, one side of that deal is good enough. And so it basically arose from people again coming to me with that demand. It was like kind of like a demand-driven business. People would come to me to say, "Oh, we're looking to buy a property. Can you help us?" And I was always my mindset about all things was everything's yes. If you ask me, can I do it? Yes. And then I go and learn how to do it. I would never turn an opportunity down.
That is an entrepreneur's case. Like, that is what he's supposed to be doing. So
absolutely,
there's no.
You know, I would never turn an opportunity down.
It's true.
You know? So I would always just think, okay, this is not rocket science. What does it involve? I will project all the confidence when you're asking me the question, and then I go and do my research.
And you're great at
so,
that.
Again, this is now the biggest. It's not the thing that keeps me busiest on the day-to-day normally, but it is what generates the most income for my business.
From being
acquisition.
So where you're where you've now set up yourself as a buyer's agent where
Exactly.
you're
As a property
sourcing
finder, a
property.
buyer's agent, acquisition agent,
Exactly.
you
Acquisition
know,
agent.
the rewards of it, because, you know, it's a very involved process. You know, when you're helping people to buy a property, it's beyond you
Understand.
just looking, helping them to look for where they're going to stay for a month. You're helping them achieve one of their long-held dreams. You know, a lot of people, London is, you know, is a very dynamic market. A lot of people aspire to own property in London. So nobody comes, no matter how rich you are, I don't care how rich you are, nobody comes like to buy in London. It's never a small deal for anyone.
Yeah.
You know, it's always an
price
achievement.
point. It is.
It's always an achievement. No matter how much plaster bought it, if it's £300,000, if it's £3 million, if it's £30 million, it's depending on the level you're at, it's still always going to be a big deal.
Yeah.
You know, so they're entrusting you with this search. The people that typically the people that would come to me for this service are people who don't have the logistical capacity to do the search themselves. That's why it's mostly targeted towards either the busy UK-based executive or the international client.
Exactly.
You know, they're not going to be coming on, you know, going back and forth.
Exactly.
You know, they're not going to be going back and forth. They entrust you. You have a long conversation with them about what they need. You get their brief in its entirety, and then you then go and materialize that
brief. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's very interesting that it was purely demand driven. I didn't just wake up one day and say, oh, I think there's a market there. The market found me in a sense. And then I just built on
when
it
you
and
do a
decided
good job, the market will find you. Yes.
Exactly. I just decided to make a market of it, to actually turn it into build a brand around it.
Yeah, so it's so great because, of course, we've watched, you know, how you've evolved in all of the different strategies and the fact that you've been able to acquire so much just by controlling and by leveraging your contacts. Now, one of the things that I wanted to find out from you is challenges. You know, we've always talked about, you know, being moms, managing that as well as managing your business. Now, how do you sort of cope? How do you manage your business and manage your family life? How do you make that happen and how do you make it work?
Okay, well, so for me, you know, to be honest, when my kids were babies, you know, it was quite difficult. You know, for me, this business, I approached this business. I had different approaches to this business at different points in my life. Obviously, like I said before, when I started it, it was a side hustle for me. I was still working in banking, and I was doing
for
it.
all of us.
You know, exactly. I was doing it kind of like just passive income, or you know, secondary. I won't say passive because it was never. You can't really be. Property is not something you can ever do in a passive way, but it was secondary income for me. So it was something I did around my day job.
Lifestyle and your day job.
You know, exactly. It had to fit around my lifestyle. You know, and so at that time, obviously, I wasn't married. I didn't have kids. You know, obviously, I was able to just. You know, my main distraction then was my job, and then whatever time I was able to, I'll get it.
And when I then point for single girls, actually, you know, we're talking about being moms and all that, but it's also about single people who are not married yet, sort of casting forward and creating some of those pillars that are going to end up being what's going to support them when they get married with the kids. It's not then that you start crying. When the kids come in, it's tough.
Yeah, by the time you start having children, sometimes, you know, life just takes a turn and some decisions are taken out of your hands. Like when I left banking, I mean, I'd always wanted to leave and, you know, go and do something entrepreneurial in the property space. But, you know, there's a mentality when you're a salary earner, there's a comfort that you get from knowing that you're getting your salary,
which,
you know. So I'd always fancied myself as being somebody that was going to be able to take the leap. But as it turned out, I was working with Lehman Brothers in administration, and then we worked ourselves out of a job because we finally wound the company down and everybody got made redundant. And thank God that I had built this to a point where, you know, by the time it then became, and by then I was pregnant already, you know, it wasn't feasible for me to go and start looking for another job with a 5-month-old pregnancy. Who would hire me and then give me a maternity leave in 1 or 2 months? So this property business that I had built the beginnings of was then what I was able to sort of focus on completely and turn that into my day job. It didn't, and so obviously in the beginning when my children were like, I had my first child, I was still able to do it. But back to your original question, it was a lot of delegation. So I would have, I built I built a
Structures
support,
and systems.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
a support system around me.
Mm-hmm.
So, I didn't have to physically go and do a lot of what I was doing was the big picture things, the strategy things, the business development that, at that level of the business,
Yeah, that
only
you could
I,
do at home with the kids. Mm-hmm.
exactly, I could do at home with the kids, where the rest of the
The
physical grunt work,
operational.
I outsourced that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then obviously you have enhanced childcare. I mean, by the time my kids got to nursery age, I put them in nursery, and just was able to focus all my time on you know building the business during the day, and at nighttime, obviously home with the family. It's just about knowing,
Yeah.
prioritizing, and
Mhm.
knowing the sort of resource and infrastructure you need around you to be able to do the job that you need to do. You can't be everywhere. You can't do it all.
Yeah.
You,
And I did say that. So when I was having kids, there were some strategies that I had to leave behind, like I had to kind of park them. So all that going to the sites, meeting with the builders, I was doing this when I was 9 months pregnant. Once the baby came out, that's the end. So I had to fall
absolutely.
back on some of his cash flow strategies, like the service
Exactly.
accommodation and those types of
Exactly.
strategies that would then
Exactly.
help me, because those ones could easily be delegated to other people to run.
Exactly.
And you
Exactly.
just literally sit at home and just be on the phone, sometimes stressed out, but at least
Exactly.
it was
I don't know whether
done.
you remember, and this is sometimes with hindsight and how you don't remember that when I was pregnant with my second son, I believe it was my second son, there was a client that had come to me with a brief to refurbish a property, and I literally was about to pop, and I told her I couldn't do it, and I handed it off to you.
Oh yes, I remember that.
Yeah.
Yeah, because literally things are happening, and this is the thing with lifestyle. It has positives in that you can be very actively involved in your kids' lives and all of that.
Exactly.
But it
Yeah.
also has its challenges where sometimes you're literally going into the maternity room, like having a baby, and then you
Absolutely.
get a call like, "Oh, can you do this?" And it's like, "Nah, I can't. Like, let me just."
I have a story to tell around that. I will actually
Oh
remember
yes,
when.
I remember this story. Good.
Yes, this is my youngest son. I remember one of my first the first properties that I actually took on into my portfolio, fully managed properties, because obviously by the time my business started to take off, I started to move away from being the pure middleman to actually having properties under management.
Mm-hmm.
I think this was probably the second or third property I took on under management. I hadn't been canvassing this client. I'd met him through Shortlights. He had come to me as a Shortlight client maybe a couple of years before that. And he had mentioned at the time that he had a flat nearby in Maidaville. And, and of course, he'd said to me he had a flat in Maidaville. I was like, oh, what are you doing with it? You
Yeah,
live
what
in
are you doing?
Nigeria?
Yes.
Let me manage it for you. And he was like, no, I don't want to. I don't want to do it. It's my home. That's always the initial objection
That's
you
always the
get. I don't want
glorified
to do it.
closet.
It's my home
Yeah.
and all that. I remember then, when I was probably about 7 months pregnant, I'd met up with him again, and he said to me, okay, come, let's have a meeting, let's talk. I think you dropped me at that meeting. You dropped me at that meeting at, if you remember, Regent's Plaza. So I'd met with him. He knew I was pregnant. We talked about taking the flat on, and he said, okay, he'll get back to me. He was traveling and all that. I remember going into, because I had my son by cesarean section. I remember going into the hospital the day before to get prepped, and then I went into early labor, and I had to stay in. And then this client called me. He called me while I was in hospital.
Wild. Yeah.
Strapped up to the machine where they're monitoring my contractions. And I was completely normal. He had no clue what was going on. He assumed I was
Exactly.
at home.
So there
We
you are,
talked about
strapped with all the baby stuff and the nurses, and there you're like, yeah, of
I was
course.
completely calm. He talked about me coming to collect the property and to start managing. I said, that's fine, no problem. Yes, that's something I would definitely like to do. And then 2 weeks later, I hadn't called him back. So he then called me and said, oh, madam, what's going on? You've not come back to me. I said, oh my God, I'm so sorry. Actually, the day you were talking to me, I was in hospital. I told him, I said, I've just had a baby. He said, what do you mean you just had a baby? I was just talking to you. I said, I was actually in hospital in labor while you were talking to me. He had no idea. So sometimes, it's the ability to compartmentalize is also very good. You don't have to give everything away, especially now with technology, you can still carry on. You can still carry on, running your business regardless of what else is going on.
But it comes down to mindset, because if you're used to having just clocking out, getting to work at 9 o'clock, clocking out at 5 o'clock, then for you, you're thinking, wow, I can't believe I'll be having a baby and having this kind of conversation. But because now
Exactly.
you're the master of your domain. So in a way,
Absolutely.
this is something I mentioned, is that one thing that used to frustrate me about working in the city is no matter what happened with your own personal circumstance, where you did well at the office, you were great, you achieved all your goals, if the company didn't perform well in that financial year, then you were completely like, like screwed. So for me, I never liked that dynamic from day one, So being able to take control, things happen, of course. Look at this COVID-19 craziness. Like, there are these black swan events that can potentially happen and really disrupt you, and I'm going to come to that actually, about service accommodation. So some people say service accommodation is effectively dead, like as a strategy. What is your thoughts about that? What is
Well,
your
no, I don't think it's dead, and I don't think, to be honest, I don't think it will, at least for the foreseeable future, until somebody comes up with, a viable alternative. Which, I mean, I like to think I'm pretty forward thinking. I can't think what the viable alternative will be. I don't think it's dead. I think right now, obviously, with COVID, it has to be shuttered, and so it has essentially been manacled and put on ice for now.
and difficult for sure.
For the obvious health and safety reasons. But it's not dead, and it won't die, because what is the alternative to short-term rentals? Unless you're saying the tourism industry is going to die. Because the truth is, the service accommodation industry feels provides an essential service. It's a legitimate space for travelers that hotels cannot meet. Imagine you're traveling with your family.
Family of five,
What are you
family
going
of six.
Family of five, family of six. You're traveling as a group. What are you going to do? Are you all going to fit into how many hotel rooms? It's completely expensive. So I think that the reasons, and then beyond being expensive, hotels are also not set up to, provide for larger groups. Even if you get interconnecting rooms, the experience is not the same.
It's not the same. The kitchen,
you're all in
people
different
want that
interconnected
separate facility to be able to cook and have their own self-catered meals.
Exactly.
That's not going to happen.
So the ability to provide self-catering accommodation is not something that is going to go away anytime soon, or the need to provide self-catering accommodation is something that is going to go away anytime soon. If we look at the way travel has evolved in the last sort of, say, 25 to 30 years, the kind of international travel that we have now is not the kind that we had 20, 25, 30 years ago, So in those times, people were still coming, but then you had a lot of people. Even if people came, went abroad, there was a lot of staying with family and friends and all that, and maybe staying in hotels. But now, as affluence has grown, as we have a growing population of professional middle class people who have a bit more disposable income, people don't want to be an inconvenience to their friends and family. People want to be able to travel beyond where they have friends and family. So the need to the service accommodation industry feels that need, because hotels really cater primarily to either the solo traveler, the business traveler, or very small groups. But if you're talking about family travel, if you're talking about extended stay, if you're talking about corporate relocation, these are the segments of the market that the service accommodation industry will do cater to, and will need to continue to cater to in the foreseeable future. What I think presents the challenge for the service accommodation industry now is the disconnect between what the industry is trying to do and what legislation is prescribing. I think legislation hasn't yet caught up to the reality of what the service accommodation industry, or what the short-term rental accommodation industry needs to do. It is
the industry.
So there's a little bit of there's a negative negative connotation. It's almost like something that's being done under the radar, and that's why a lot of people feel like his days are numbered. But I think that if you were to shutter the short-term rental market, I think governments and legislators would then find that there's no actual viable alternative for it. So I think what they need to do, what needs to happen is for legislation and there needs to be freehold reform. I think, freeholders need to recognize that instead of trying to demonize short-term rentals and run them underground, I think you need to embolden operators and maybe try and buy into what they're doing.
And
I think most operators will be ready to
necessary
pay
licenses and stuff to go.
Exactly. Most operators will be ready to pay a surcharge to a freeholder if it meant that, they could be more transparent about what they're doing, But it's the fact that there just seems to be this, a lot of negative backlash from companies like Airbnb because of maybe isolated cases of, people that have gone in and have, made properties or had parties. In every endeavor in life, there will always be abuse. There will always be people who have abused the system. There will always be people who have misused, the system. But I don't think we should ever throw away the baby with the bathwater. I don't think that if short-term accommodations get banned tomorrow, I don't think people are going to stop traveling. And I think that as long as people do not stop traveling, people are not going to find hotel accommodation as a suitable alternative to what they can get from short-term rentals. So I don't think it's going anywhere. I think we just need to reform the way we do it. We need to maybe as a body come together and maybe create a stronger voice, a stronger lobby voice that will advocate for what we as industry operators need. And what kind of, maybe controls and oversight we're ready to submit ourselves to.
Yeah, great. So, but actually, let's move back a bit. So somebody, we started all of this with talking about getting into the business and how you were able to build your business in just from leveraging and, managing your contacts and all that. Now, and sort of looking long-term, you kind of developed long-term solid relationships with your existing clients so that even when they came back for additional services, they knew you were the go-to person. Now, what's your advice to somebody who's looking to start this business, doesn't have any money, has thought about property the same way you were thinking about it those many years ago? What is your advice to them today? How would you see them getting into the business?
I think for me, the first thing they have to recognize is that don't be cowed by the idea that you need a ton of money to do this. It would be great if you had a packet of money to invest and build up, maybe rent a few properties and start to sublet them or whatever. It'd be great if you had that, or it'd be great if you had some capital to maybe buy your first or couple of properties and flip them for a profit or whatever. But even if you don't have that, as long as you're able to dig deep, as long as you're imaginative, as long as you're somebody who has a passion for the business, who has a vision for the business, who can, articulate what you want to do, you'll be able to look for a partner. Because there are lots of people who probably want to invest in property, but either locationally or time-wise, logistically, they're not in a position to. Maybe status-wise as well, they're not in a position to. But they are looking for somebody like you who's probably located in the country where they're looking to invest, and who is able to access maybe financing, maybe because you already have a job here or you have a credit footprint here. Just look for somebody who can finance what you're trying to do, and for whom you will be able to provide some value.
So in what you're describing, so there are two different avenues here. So you can go down the joint venture route where you find somebody who has either the asset or has the funds. It doesn't matter how even
invest in the asset, exactly.
Invest in something that you're doing. But obviously you have to build that know, like, and trust factor first. So they have to know you, they have to like you, know that you're competent. And then, so you have to build that up.
Typically, the easiest route, typically it would be somebody you already know.
Exactly.
But it doesn't even have to be. It could be an introduction, because if we're going to if business is going to be restricted to only people we know, then we're not going to get.
It's not going to happen.
As that's why I said it's very important that you're able to articulate your vision. You can pitch what you're doing to people who.
I met somebody who she loves going to the bakery, and she literally just met somebody at the bakery and they started talking, and before you knew it, that became her first investor. So
absolutely.
opportunities are everywhere. It's just
everywhere. You just have to. Be able to articulate what you're selling and sell it convincingly, without sounding like an opportunist or somebody who's selling snake oil.
Yeah.
If you're passionate about it, if you're knowledgeable about it, you're able to convince people about the returns, about the value in your business proposition, then I think that's definitely the way.
And
You don't need
to be honest, now
to
it's not actually a
have money.
difficult time to do that, especially with people that live in the UK, because
Mhm.
bank interest rates are now at like 0%. So,
Absolutely.
the sell is actually
The
easier.
time once the government eases the regulations around buying within this whole coronavirus that we're in, then I think that this is definitely the best time to try and get your foot into the property ladder, because the terms have never been as good as they are now. Although there will probably be more stringent lending criteria being applied in terms of more.
So, you know how we got in, when we got in, how many years ago when we bought that first property, understanding the terrain. So, getting mortgages was quite difficult, wasn't it?
It was
All
quite
of a
difficult.
sudden, they used to give all these ridiculous mortgages based on like self-certification.
Yeah.
All that just went out the window. And so
completely disappeared. Yeah.
you can almost expect
They
that.
actually became illegal. You couldn't.
Yeah.
I remember around the time we're buying, the Northern Rock was offering I had an agreement principle for 100% mortgage from Northern Rock. They don't even.
Although we were lucky because we were still able to get about 90 or 95%.
Got 95%. I think we only put down 5%.
Yeah.
We only put down 5%.
Yeah, so those deals don't even exist anymore. Now you can imagine that with this now, with all that's happened with COVID, is that lenders will even get more tight when it comes to their lending criteria. I'm hearing
Exactly.
60% loan
because the stress testing that has to happen is necessarily going to be more stringent.
Yes.
So, because in a recession, it will be an irresponsible lender that doesn't tighten up their lending criteria.
Yeah. But yeah, so that's been very serious talk, and it's been amazing having you on. But before you go, of course, let's come to the fun aspect of it. So we're moms, and we always have this, like with COVID-19 and the lockdown, dealing with the kids in the home all day long, like seriously. So how are you coping with this? How are you managing your life and managing your business and getting it to work?
Well, I think what I've found is I think this has allowed me to allow my children to become a lot more independent.
Oh, great. It's true.
Yes. It's it was a struggle in the first couple of weeks because they were so restless, they didn't know what to do with themselves, so they were just bounding all over the place. But now I've been able to at least get some sort of groove going. I'm not going to pretend and say we have some fantastic structured day. No, we don't. But if I can get them sitting quiet for maybe 30 minutes at a time,
and you have two boys.
Yeah, and I have two boys who are very close together in age, who are 21 months apart,
Wow.
So they're each other's mortal competition, But what I've found is that now, as the lockdown continues, it's becoming less and less abnormal for them. Yeah. They themselves have come to terms with it. They're more accepting of this new normal. And one thing I learned from children is that children are very imaginative. They're very resourceful. In this lockdown, my children have traveled. They've had beach holidays.
I know. We've been traveling to all sorts of countries. They've
traveled to Portugal. They've gone on the plane. They've taken dives into the ocean. They become ghosts, they just, whatever it is they have in the house, they turn it, use imaginative play to, and you see them role playing it. They're telling me about it, saying, oh, this is what we're doing. Oh, we're at the beach. Oh, we're doing this. Oh, we're ocean diving. We're doing, and I just find, oh, wow, and so I watch them, as they are entertaining themselves, and kind of almost relieving me of the need to be, running around after them. So in the beginning, it was very difficult for me to take a work call because they were constantly the soundtrack.
And for a long time, actually, those kids have been a soundtrack to your life. Like many times,
absolutely. But now, thankfully, I'm able to leave them in a room where I can see them. I know that they're safe. I can listen to their conversation as they're chatting away with each other and they're enjoying spending time with each other. And I can get on with my own business. So they've just been able to sort of adapt to their surroundings. They've been able to take things in their surroundings and use their imagination to explore and kind of, keep themselves engaged. And then, of course, there's always, we have the times in the day where we're doing fun stuff together, we're cooking, we're baking, we're just, the beautiful thing about COVID is it's allowed us to reset. It's allowed us more time, you know,
really,
to spend with the
look back
children,
at your
to
business and look and spend time with your kids. Yes.
absolutely, absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
So it's not all bad. I think when we come to the end of this, we'll realize that as devastating as this lockdown has been to businesses and, you know, just
Life.
livelihoods in general, we will also have good takeaways from it. It will certainly have given us the opportunity to maybe look at some more latent aspects of our businesses and say, okay, what can we do?
What
You
can
know,
we do better? For
what
sure.
can we do better? Yes.
So that's one
Yeah.
of the
What can we
things
do? How
that
do
when
we
you're
flesh
in
this
the
out?
business, yeah, you're just constantly going and constantly working in the business, but not taking
Exactly,
a step back.
exactly. Not being able to, not
Yes.
being able to stand up apart from it and look at it and say, how could we tweak this? And especially in our sector where a large part of our daily bread and butter is the shortlets, you know, and you know that's a very,
That
you
was
know,
a big
involved
thing.
business.
That was
It's a lot of running around. It's a lot of, you know, very full on, you
yeah.
know. But now we've seen with COVID that it's very sensitive to these sort of seismic shocks like this,
Because it was
you
one of
know.
those businesses that I always knew, especially the rent to rent. You were always sort of,
Yeah.
you always took that step back from rent to rent. But for me, rent to rent was always just this amazing, like a multiplier effect, especially
Yeah.
when you're coming from buying properties where you see how much I was describing on the webinar that I held, how a property that I was controlling at £10,000, that's how I acquired that property, was actually sold in November. The property next door to it was sold for just over £1 million. So I was controlling that property for a percentage, 1% of the actual value of the property, and
Absolutely.
earning the returns on that property. So you imagine how awesome that strategy was while it was booming for the past 7 years we've been in that business. Now, just to come to this sort of devastating, just before we were coming to Easter, when how the pretty much
when it starts, the uptick happens and things starts to
from
boom.
the low season right into this really like great season right up to the end of the year effectively.
Yeah.
And then wow.
And then everything just went to hell, really.
Yeah.
And this is what this COVID would, at least for me as a business, as somebody who operates in this space, this is what it has allowed me to sit down and reflect. I think I've always, part of me has always taken the short-lets aspect of it for granted. It's been sure cash. It's been sure cash. You know the kind of cash that you can generate from this business. There'll be times in the year where you're a bit quiet, but honestly, the 6-7 months in a year where you're active make up for it.
Oh my God.
So anything you get in the other months of the year is pretty much like a bonus. Is fine. But now seeing the sensitivity, we've never nothing like COVID has ever
happened this before. Exactly.
Nothing like this ever happened. So I don't think any of us was expecting this. None of us had
How could you
plans
plan for it?
this.
How?
Yeah, none of us had plans for this.
Yeah.
You know how we bled. You know how we've had to refund. We've cancelled bookings. It has been a bloodbath for us in this industry. But what the positive I take from it is that it's now allowed us to sit back and look at our business and say, okay, how do we fleshing it out? We're not so sensitive. We're not so dependent on
that side
this aspect of the business. And I think for me, that's what. So now it has me thinking of. I'm looking at some collaborations in future. Going into the part of my business that I haven't really paid that much attention to is developing for my own portfolio. I develop for other people. I help people build up their own investment portfolio, but we haven't, as a business, really sought to buy much to own, to hold.
Yeah.
So now I had me looking at collaborations between my somebody who is somebody I used to work with, and who's happy to sort of serve as a mentor in things like HMOs and buying to create, and you already do quite a bit in that space as well. So these are things that we probably disdained before as thinking like, oh, it's a lot of work for not that much return. But imagine if we had more of those in our portfolio now, it wouldn't be as painful.
It wouldn't,
because your income would still be rolling in regardless.
Regardless. Although so HMOs have also taken a bit of a hit. Maybe
of
not.
course, no, definitely, for sure. Even our long-term rentals have taken I've told you stories about how with a lot of the tenants that are sitting in our long-term properties, a lot of them have had stories about how COVID has affected them, and we've had to make concessions in terms of the rent. But at least it's not
You have
complete
that
cessation of business
yeah.
like we've experienced
Yeah,
in
because
short
that's the
term.
good thing. In my case, I have a portfolio where some of them are service accommodation and some of them are long-term rentals. And it's the long-term rentals that have actually held me through the season, right? So
Exactly.
because those guys are not going anywhere.
They're not going
Some of
anywhere.
them have
Exactly.
had
And that's my point. Yeah.
maybe they're foreseeing that their income might be staggered, or but overall it's been strong, compared
Yeah.
to mortgages that one is paying.
Yeah.
So, but when you compare it to service accommodation, of course, it's a different story. But yeah, it's been great definitely having this conversation and just having an idea of how you've grown, and the direction that you're thinking of taking your business to.
Yeah.
Fantastic. And
Yeah.
it's just about letting people know that they can get into property without that initial capital. You've grown your business,
Absolutely.
you've done all of the
Yeah.
things you've done, and it's really just by that sheer determination. But you have
Yeah,
that
the pluck, just the pluck, the
the
ability
plot.
to sell yourself and to
And
sell
I
yourself.
have to tell my audience something. Remember when you were, because I remember between, I think whether it was baby 1 and 2, you wanted to go back to work. And because
Right.
I know you as a person, I'd said, look, if I can make it in this business, just leaving work, there's no way,
Exactly.
And you've done leaps and
Absolutely.
bounds, because for sure.
And it's funny because I was the one that even sort of introduced you to
I know.
the business. We were
Service,
both working in
that's
the
what I was
city.
saying.
I was the one that started in whatever, and you just kind of ran with it. You
Yeah.
just, started it, and you took that leap first. You voluntarily left BP and said, yeah, I'm just going to do this, and I was still,
without the guaranteed. So, and this is another thing, is also being sure that you've generated some income from it, right? That you have something steady. Remember how you mentioned that you had it as your side hustle first as well. So, where you've already established something before you quit your day job, make sure you have at least 1 to
absolutely
2 years of established income generation before
exactly.
you're
You
steady.
know how you know what your values and
Yeah.
troughs will be. Your baseline. You know that you're not going to be hungry.
Yeah.
The only thing you can do is build up from this.
So, but yeah, so Temi, it's been so great having you on.
It's been lovely being on. It's been lovely being on. Which is certainly, I'm looking forward to being invited again. We will have different topics to
Different
explore.
topics, for sure. Yes. So wishing you all the best, and just any parting words for the audience.
Parting words, I would say, be brave and be courageous. You can make you can make good money from property. You just have to be savvy about it. You have to be able to spot opportunity when you see it. You have to have the boldness not to balk at things that might look a bit daunting. You also have to don't be reckless. Because
Calculated risk.
property is not a get rich quick scheme by any means. But just if you're level-headed and you're calm and you're smart about it, it's something where even if you just need it as a springboard for now, even if it's not something you want to devote 100% of your time to, it's something you want to maybe dip your toe in, start out maybe investing. It's something that you definitely you can make good money from. So I would say just be bold and inform yourself, educate yourself.
Educate yourself. I said that.
There's definitely money to be made in property.
So anyone who's looking to start out, definitely listen to first episode. We've covered a lot of what, it's nice to have somebody here who actually is living and breathing property. So you understand that these things we're talking about, it's not, we're not just making up these things.
No, they're practical. Yeah, they're things that they're real. It's real life. Yeah,
real life. So you can, if it's something that you think, but it has to be something that you want to do for yourself. You have to. Remember that we both love property. I don't know that I started loving it as much as I do now. Like I always relate it to a relationship when you meet someone, how you kind of like the person. But then with time, you start to really like the person. Then
exactly.
So I feel like property has evolved like that for me. So I liked it. I thought it was a good thing, but I enjoyed it, and that's important. So property, you have to enjoy an aspect of
it.
Pick a strategy that works with your strengths, and then build up from that. And then
I'll add this: if you don't enjoy it, then this is not for you, because it can certainly frustrate you. Yes. If it's not something you're doing for
nights have called each other on.
And it can if it's not if you don't have that if it doesn't give you that sense of satisfaction, then it's just going to be a lot of pain for nothing.
Well, for you to make the money, but it's just like
You make the money, but there's simpler ways.
Are you sure? Nah, I'm not sure about this.
They're less stressful. I mean, you might not make as much, but what I'm saying is that when the pains that when the pains that come with property come, if you're not somebody who is in it because you enjoy it will frustrate you.
Yeah,
it will frustrate you. It's going to be like that job you feel like you want to run away from. And again, it's something that can wipe you out financially as well, especially if you're invested in it financially. If you don't love it, you can get your hands burnt. You can certainly lose your shirts. So
So to wrap up, finally, it's just to let you know that our next episode will be next week. And, it's been great having Temi on the show, and we'll definitely have her back. She's a property mom, living, breathing, doing it. And it's just to let you know that you can do it as well. It's not,
absolutely can.
It's not something that, you do. You don't have to be a rocket scientist or anything like that. You just have to have that bravery and step out and do it. Step out cautiously, but step out anyway.
Absolutely.
So thank you, Temi, and
thank you, Dolly.
All the best for the future.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Bye.